Alright, what is up, lads and lass? So, today's video is going to be a little short one about how to pull 600 pounds natty.
Oh! Up!
And the short answer to that question is don't be natty. But if we're being serious, I managed to pull it without taking gear, being an under 80 kilo strongman competitor. Not that body weight matters that much, but for you dots obsessed powerlifting boys, that's about where I'm at. So what I'm going to talk about here is going to be less about general recommendations, and I'm more just going to tell you guys the top 3 things that I did that I believe are the reason why I pulled 600 pounds. And I'm going to put them in what I think are order of importance. The first component was the technique change I implemented. So just to lay out a story for you guys, I was stuck on between about a 240 to maybe 250 on a whoopee bar pull for like 18 months. Just couldn't get past that. I was just stuck. And then I started my new deadlift program, getting ready for Africa's Strongest Man last year, and I was determined to fix that problem. And I got to the point where I pulled a really nice rep PB. I pulled 242 for a triple. And I was like, damn, this is going to be great. Okay, I'm definitely going to be good for a 270 once I peak. And I did that. And the next week, I was supposed to pull the end of the next kind of 3-week phase, I was supposed to pull 255 for a single, which should not have been very hard if you look at, 242 for a triple. And I pulled it, and it was an absolute RPE 11. And at this stage, I was pulling with straps, complete strongman style, and my hope sank into my stomach as I went, oh fuck, this is not gonna end well. So I packed my bag, went home, and I went, okay, I need to just deload and kind of reset my thoughts here. And I came back in the next week and went, okay, I'm just gonna hit a light session. A couple of my mates were there who were also prepping, and they were like, no, because we're not really, we're not super competitive. We're pulling without straps because it's just what we're used to. So I went, okay, it's a deload. So I'm just going to pull a single without straps. It'll be nice, nice and light. It'll be fine. And as I was warming up, I just started getting a bigger and bigger smile because somehow, even though I had pulled an RPE 11 the previous week, everything felt easier. So I was setting up at the top, kind of John Hack style. If you guys know how he pulls, it's not necessarily yanking the bar off the floor, but it's getting really braced at the top, dropping down, just picking the bar up on the way up. And I ended up in a deload week pulling an all-time PB, pulling 260, and it was like an RPE 8 maybe. I definitely had more reps in the tank, and I suddenly went, oh shit, this is what I've been missing. Now, I don't think a technique change like that is going to make a big difference for everyone. Like, there's a hyperfixation on technique these days, and technique doesn't, no amount of technique is going to get you to super elite levels of strength. But there is an exception to that, which is if you're lifting in a way that is completely counter to your biomechanics, and if you're setting up in a way that causes you to fight yourself on a lift, then you are leaving big mega pounds on the table. And that's what happened to me. So when I pull with straps, I pull into almost against myself, and it just makes me way weaker. So pulling without straps is the way to go. And grip isn't an issue for me because of all the years of doing strongman stuff. Grip is like, my grip doesn't fail. So why not pull that way if I pull more weight? So that was thing 1. Now, thing 2 on the importance list for me, and this is where it gets more specific to me, is I got my stiff leg deadlift beltless up to about 210 kilos. Now, why the stiff leg deadlift? Well, the stiff leg deadlift for me does 2 things. if you look at my build, I am kind of, I would say, more of the deadlift build. Long arms, long legs, short torso. When I pull, it's pretty upright already. I'm very back dominant. My hips are pretty good, in pretty close to the bar. And what that means is that I needed a variation to disadvantage me. Now, most people would go, because I was weak off the floor, always have been, would go deficit pulls. Deficit pulls didn't help me as much. When I went to stiff legs, it did two things. So when you do stiff leg deadlifts, what you're essentially doing is pulling almost completely posterior. Well, you are pulling completely posterior. You lock out your legs as hard as you can. You brace your back. You have to brace it even tighter than you do on an actual conventional deadlift, because the bar is, even though if you put it in the same place in your feet, it's relatively kind of further away from you. And what you then have to do is really use the hamstrings and the glutes and keep the lower back tight to lock out the deadlift. So it helps with the start, or it did for me, because stiff legs are extremely slow off the floor. There's no quad involvement. So it can be sometimes 2-3 seconds before it actually breaks the floor and starts moving. And so it really helps off the floor by actually forcing you to learn how to grind and learning you how to find that right position to lock in your back and lock everything in off the floor before the weight starts moving. It also helps with the lockout, though, because you have to brace so much harder and it's so disadvantaged. You have to keep a really, really tight back and use your glutes to lock out the weight once it gets past your knees. It's almost like a teeter-totter if you think about it that way. So that made the world's of difference for me. And the way that I trained that is I used what I call pain sets. I'll throw up an example of how that works on the screen, but essentially the idea is to work on density, get a lot of work done in a short amount of time. So what I would do is set of 10, set of 8, set of 6, set of 4, set of 2, and a single, all in one workout, and I would time it. And it would take between, let's call it 6 and about 10 minutes, and then I would just increase the weight each week. And what that did, which was great for me, is it grows a lot of muscle because the density is really high, the fatigue is really high, but by the end of about a 5-week run, you end up hitting 100%, so your old 1RM, on the back end of a bunch of volume, and then you know you've got a PR in the tank. So I hit the 210 stiff leg. I didn't peak for it. I hit it at the end of a block like that. So I probably could have pulled more, but the point is I was able to do that in general training. Once I hit that number, it put me in striking distance for my regular deadlift to be over 600 pounds. The third thing that I did, and this is the least important, not because it didn't make a difference for me, but because it's probably the least applicable, and that was lowering my deadlift frequency. And the reason why I say it's least applicable is because you can deadlift with a high frequency if you do it the right way. If you limit the intensity, you limit the volume, and you just do a bunch of skill stuff, then you can deadlift 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week, if you're really clever. But then you really have to back off on the effort, and for me, that's just not something that I've ever really been able to do. Maybe it's, just mental block immaturity, or maybe it's just it's not the way that I get excited about lifting. So what I did is I dropped my frequency all the way down to once a week. I would do my deadlifts, then I would do stiff legs, the stiff leg pain sets, and then I would do my accessories for hamstrings, and I wouldn't touch a hinge again for a whole week. And that made a massive difference because I felt really fresh every time I went into the workouts. I didn't have to worry about fatigue from my second or accessory session bleeding into my current session. That, to me, being used to deadlifting or hinging 2 to 3 times a week, made a massive difference. Now, again, before I end this off, guys, this doesn't mean that this is going to work for everyone, all right? And it doesn't even mean it's going to work for me again. So I'm still doing stiff legs, but one of the deadlift accessories currently that's helping fix my deadlift is counterintuitively block pulls, because the weakness in my pull now is my mid-back, and and block pulls from about 15-16 inches off the floor make a massive difference for that, for me at least. So this shouldn't be set in stone for how you fix your deadlift, but I wanted to tell you guys what I did and the approach that I took to look at my deadlift specifically and go, what are the weaknesses? What are the things I can change? What are the accessories that I can push instead of just thinking about pushing my deadlift? What's the one accessory, maybe two accessories I can push really hard that I know will get my deadlift to climb? And then that's how I went about pulling the 600 pounds. So if you want to use that as a kind of template to figure out what are the changes you need to make, then great, fantastic. I hope this helps. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers.